Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Out of Time Reviews, the show that I keep telling myself to make opening credits for, and somehow that hasn't happened yet. I'm Andrew Parker, senior writer and film critic for TheGATE.ca, back again with another rundown of my thoughts on the latest films to hit streaming and theaters. In addition to this batch of reviews, you can head on over to the website to check out some of my written reviews on film and television releases. And right here on the channel, you can catch my interview with Canadian filmmaker Chandler Levac, who dropped two films this weekend, the Netflix comedy Roommates, and the film that we ultimately talked about, Mile End Kicks. Links for those will be in the description down below. And we have 6 movies to talk about this weekend, starting with the aforementioned Mile End Kicks, a romantic comedy about a journalist moving from Toronto to Montreal. The stark British prison drama Wasteman, starring rising stars David Johnson and Tom Blythe. The World War II drama Amrum, from filmmakers Fatih Akin and Hark Bohm. Ian McKellen and Michaela Coel, star in Steven Soderbergh's comedy drama The Christophers. Lorne, a documentary about SNL creator and longtime showrunner Lorne Michaels. And finally, we unearth the evil lurking within Lee Cronin's The Mummy, a movie that's not quite a mop and not quite a puppet, but oh boy, I don't know what it's supposed to be. Like, share, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. On with the show.
Yeah, seem really comfortable. So, how long have you been a shoe salesman?
Too long. I like to treat it like it's an art project, you know? Shoes. So, how's that thing you're talking about?
My book?
Yeah.
It's great. I got a publishing deal. How's the band going, eh? Got any shows coming up?
Yeah, it's good. We have our first EP launch in August. But there's nothing really lined up. It's stupid.
Well, I'm a music critic. I write for Spin sometimes.
Do you write for Pitchfork?
No, not Pitchfork. But I am a big fan of your work. I could, interview you sometime.
Yeah, we can do that. Maybe this weekend.
In the 2011 set Mile End Kicks, Barbie Ferreira stars as Grace, a young journalist from Toronto who packs up one summer, leaving her thankless job as a music critic at an alt weekly behind, and moves to Montreal with a list of lofty goals in mind. She wants to spend some time writing a book about the impact, history, and influence that Alanis Morissette's album Jagged Little Pill had on music and her personal life. She wants to document the white-hot music scene in the city, and she hopes to live a more adult life, falling in love and having what she calls quote-unquote actual sex rather than what she's used to back home. Grace cozies up to a local band called Bone Patrol and begins to form attachments to 2 of its key members. Lead singer Chevy, played by Stanley Simons, is a conventionally attractive but mercurial lead singer, a shoe salesman by day who has a bad attitude and some serious pretension issues. On the other hand, guitarist and PEI transplant Archie, played by Devin Bostick, is the friendly and quite literal boy next door, but he has a secret about why he refuses to make any moves with Grace. Writer-director Chandler Levac draws from some of her own experiences as a pop culture journalist in the early teens to craft a bittersweet reflection on youthful ambition. To some degree, Mile End Kicks could be classified as a romantic comedy. It is, after all, built around a love triangle that impacts every facet of the characters' collective lives. But a broader look at what Levac is trying to convey shows layers and depths that go well beyond genre conventions and standards. The romance is built upon palpable layers of discomfort born from feelings of being young, insecure, and a little naive. It's also a fish-out-of-water story, both in terms of culture and geography. Grace learns the hard way that Montreal is almost nothing like Toronto, and this music scene that she wants to partake in so badly is a lot different than what she's observed from afar. The expectations that Grace had versus the reality of everything are infinitely relatable to any person who once took a big swing and then had mixed feelings about the whole experience afterwards. In the lead, Ferreira shows nice ebbs and flows that fit the inconsistencies of Grace's moods. 1 minute Grace can be enjoying life, and seconds later it can all be crashing down around her, and Ferreira is able to make those swift pivots realistically and empathetically. Bostick shines in his scenes opposite Ferreira, nicely playing the part of a close friend and potential suitor. Even if these characters don't get together in the end, the viewer's still happy that these two were able to connect on some level. Simon steals his scenes as the sometimes unhinged Chevy, mostly because of that character's goal, to hog the spotlight, most memorably during a gorgeously shot rooftop serenade where he sings a song that's both loving and idiotic at the same time. There's even a nice supporting role here for Jay Baruchel, who appears as Grace's shady, abusive, and condescending boss. Mile and Kicks captures both the time period and feeling of its setting perfectly. Levac strikes a tone somewhere between nostalgia and reliving a lot of teachable moments. It's a film that could serve as a nice guidebook for people living in their teens and early 20s, but also holds space for the older crowd that has had their heart broken, dreams put on pause, and stumbled through a lot of hardship and awkward situations to become the people they are today. It's a lovely film, and one that's getting an 8 out of 10 from me.
What you need to do is start visualizing your life outside.
I'm getting out.
Of course, this is all dependent on continued good behavior.
You got a new cell, mate.
We are open for business.
Can't have all that shit in here.
Yo, man, you need to relax. You fucking messing with my zen.
Who else is serving up? Well, no. It's his business.
For his first feature, director and co-writer Cal McMahon takes viewers inside the walls of a UK prison in Wasteman, a gritty, palpably intense thriller about one man's attempts to survive his last weeks behind bars. David Johnson stars as Taylor, an inmate who's just learned that his time in prison for manslaughter is coming to an early end after 13 years, a combination of his good behavior and reforms made that need to push people through the system faster. Taylor seems unsure if he's ready to be released just yet and shows sign of growing accustomed to his surroundings, but he does want to get out and try to form a bond with his now 14-year-old son that he barely knows. Just as the ball gets rolling on his release, Taylor gets a new cellmate, Dee, played by a virtually unrecognizable Tom Blythe, who rolls in with a big attitude and enough products to open a corner store out of their cell. Dee wants to be a big-time drug dealer and top boy on the inside, just as he was on the outside, but Dee's ambitions put Taylor at odds with the current cell block drug lords, a pair of hardened cellmates that Taylor provides with free haircuts in exchange for fixes that ease his own drug addictions. When Dee perceives that his cellie has betrayed his trust, he forces Taylor into an untenable situation that could jeopardize not only his early release, but the safety of his son on the outside. McMahon opens Wasteman with cell phone footage of various crimes, boasts, and glimpses of everyday life that happens within the prison. It's a useful motif that the director keeps returning to. The framing of Wasteman doesn't grow much more than the cell phone footage, adding to the heightened air of claustrophobia and close quarters throughout. There's no privacy, no peace, and this prison isn't the type of place where inmates go to be rehabilitated. This is treated by most inmates as more of a stopgap between jobs outside these walls. It's also heavily implied that even though Taylor's addictions contributed in some way to his current situation, being in such a chaotic environment has made him even more of an addict. Wasteman is joyless by design, and the oppressive nature of the surroundings and the brutality of the violence that occurs has an uncomfortable but earned sense of authenticity. It's impressive what McMahon was able to accomplish behind the camera in such a small space, shooting inside of an actual decommissioned prison, but it's the chance to watch a pair of continually evolving performers stretching even further in the lead roles that makes Wasteman so electrifying. As the titular Wasteman, which is slang for someone who's just trying to get through the day and not make something better of their lives, Johnson's nuanced portrayal of a nervous and scared young person forced to relive their own mistakes every day while simultaneously paying for the misdeeds of others is heart-wrenching. The sadness and fear exhibited by Johnson is palpable. As his loose cannon counterpart, Blythe is a live wire that's always dangling over a filled bathtub. Blythe exudes delusional invincibility, even telling guards to their faces that he doesn't feel the need to be careful. Dee is constantly running his mouth and boasting, but when the character goes silent, that's when people need to start worrying that something awful is going to happen. Wasteman is another fascinating step in the trajectory of both actors. After Johnson made huge impressions in the likes of Rye Lane, The Long Walk, and Alien Romulus, and Blythe garnered a lot of attention in projects like The Hunger Games, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, Plainclothes, and People We Meet on Vacation, it's becoming clear that neither actor is interested in being typecast. They make such interesting choices that getting to watch them butting heads in a film like Wasteman becomes something special. They play perfectly off of one another, even though their characters are like fire and water. Their performances, matched with McMahon's strong sense of setting and attitude, nets this one an 8 out of 10 from me overall.
Was ist denn das für eine Welt, in der sie jetzt aufwachsen muss?
Es kommt nicht darauf an, wo man geboren ist, sondern von wem man abstammt. Von der Ahnenreihe. Unsere Soldaten kämpfen fürs Vaterland. Für uns.
Russland 50 Kilometer vor Berlin.
Was tut man's Hitler sein Skit kriegt ju an.
Kommt Vater jetzt nach Haus?
Wie kommst du darauf?
Weil der Krieg bald vorbei ist.
Wie ist denn deiner Mutter?
Seitdem der Führer tot ist, will sie nichts mehr essen. Nur noch Weißbrot mit Butter und Honig.
The coming-of-age drama Amrum is a collaboration between filmmakers Fatih Akin and Hark Bohm, set on the titular German island in the North Sea during the waning days of World War II in the spring of 1945. Amrum is based in part on the childhood of intended director Bohm, who wasn't in good enough health to helm the production and who sadly passed away not long after the film's release in Germany late last year. Directing and co-writing duties went to close friend and collaborator Akin, a filmmaker best known for the likes of In the Fade, Head On, and The Edge of Heaven, and this delicate story of a young boy learning about the harshness of the world around him is in safe and steady hands. Outstanding newcomer Jasper Billerbeck stars as 12-year-old Nanning, a member of the Hitler Youth who's currently off at war. Father has written numerous books filled with Nazi pseudoscience. His mother Hele, played by Laura Tonke, is a true believer in the cause, and any talk that the war is about to end is tantamount to treason in her household. When Hilly has another baby on the same day that Hitler takes his own life, she falls into a seemingly unbreakable depression. Hilly refuses to eat anything other than butter and honey on white bread, items that are in short supply thanks to blockades, economic upheaval, and food scarcity. Young Jasper heads out on his own to come up with the items needed to break his mother's funk, entering into a series of barters, trades, and odd jobs to procure everything he seeks, learning a lot about the history of the island and his own family's secrets in the process. Some elements of Bohm and Akin's script are rather obvious and on the nose, but Amrum's choice to center the story around a young person experiencing a lot of uncomfortable feelings and making hard choices for the first time makes those conveniences and shortcuts easier to swallow. Jasper is learning how the world really works for the first time now that the comfort and security once provided by his high-ranking father is taken away. Although Jasper's family has ancestral roots on the island of Amrum, he's never treated like a true local and is looked down upon by some of the kids as being no better than the boatloads of mainland refugees that are starting to take up residence there. In fact, the transplanting of Jasper's family from Amrum to Hamburg is tied to a dark sequel that will leave the young man shaken. Billerbeck's leading performance is a great example of a measured, intelligent portrait of a young person who's gradually learning that his family is on the wrong side of history and that his mother has chosen to suffer indignantly rather than face up to her actions. One can feel the gradual shifts in Billerbeck's performance with each of the characters' interactions with the island's adults, most notably in scenes opposite Diane Kruger as the family's staunchly anti-fascist farmer neighbor and Lisa Hagmeister as his live-in Aunt Ina. The film delicately examines the layers of generational trauma that led to World War II and that linger long after it has ended. As one character says to Nanning in a dream sequence, he wasn't personally responsible for what Germany did during the war, but he will forever be tied to it no matter what else happens in his life. That's heavy stuff for a kid to hear, but Akin and Bohm offset that harshness with a sort of gentility. The adults all know that they are all speaking to a child that's trying really hard, so they tell Nanning the truth but deliver it in a way that hopefully won't damage the kid for life. After all, it's Nanning's ailing mother that will have a harder time confronting the truth than her children ever will. Akin and cinematographer Carl Walter Lindlow make the most of the gorgeous scenery at their disposal, even when Nanning has to witness the toll of death and hardship firsthand. A sequence where Nanning sneaks out to the beach in the middle of the night only to discover something shocking displays a great balance between poetic beauty and objective reality. The film also moves at a surprisingly fast pace, clocking in at just over 90 minutes and never feeling like anything is missing or out of place. For all of these reasons, Amrum gets a 7 out of 10 from me.
Other door.
You said this was a restoration job. It's a forgery job.
We know why you hate him.
Think of this as a way to get revenge.
This isn't about the unfinished Christophers, is it? These don't even speak of them.
Everybody knows what one original Julian Sklar from that period is worth.
I lied. You are to speak of them once, when you tell me they are no more. And then bring me the evidence. It's not that I don't trust you, Laurie. It's just that I don't trust you. Have you ever been betrayed, Laurie?
Michaela, Coel, and Ian McKellen team up as the most unlikely duo of grumpy buddies this year in director Steven Soderbergh's art world comedy The Christophers, a film that finds the ever-shifting filmmaker once again in feel-good lark mode. Coel stars as Laurie, a down-on-her-luck London artist who's barely scraping by these days doing restoration work. Laurie is approached by brother and sister Barnaby and Sally Sklar, played by James Corden and Jessica Gunning, with a unique but highly unethical proposition. They want Laurie to infiltrate the insular world of the relative whose estate they're posed to inherit, famed painter Julian Sklar, played by McKellen. The goal is to have Laurie complete 7 unfinished paintings that were intended to be a part of Julian's most famous collection of portraits from his most celebrated period, known as The Christophers, which means this is more of a forgery job than a restoration assignment. Laurie takes a job as Julian's assistant, a thankless gig looking after a man who revels in his past glories, believes his own genius, and who now makes most of his money delivering half-hearted cameo videos to fans obsessed with an old television show where he made a living denigrating the artistic talents of housewives and children. He hasn't painted anything in ages, and that doesn't seem likely to change anytime soon. Needless to say, Laurie and Julian don't get along well, but once the old man gets hip to what's going on, he develops some respect for his new employee, and the pair concoct a scheme that runs counter to the ones plotted by his duplicitous relatives. Screenwriter Ed Solomon, who previously worked with Soderbergh on the film No Sudden Move and the limited series Full Circle and Mosaic, provides a solid basis for the director and leads to have a delightful battle of wits. Predominantly a two-hander, The Christophers showcases Coel and McKellen at their absolute best, particularly the latter, who seems to be cherishing the opportunity to go back and forth with a younger performer that can match his character's laconic, droll personality beat for beat. As a dry, deadpan, washed-up curmudgeon high on his own past successes, McKellen gets to the heart of someone who has knowingly become a sellout, putting forth a blustery front that masks deep insecurities. For her part, Coel plays an older sort of soul, someone with a tremendous amount of talent who has never been recognized for it. She has a history with Sklar, but he doesn't seem to remember it, and every time Laurie gets a leg up on the old man, one can tell how much she relishes it via Coel's understated but finely tuned performance. The more comfortable Laurie becomes around Julian and recognizes his self-destructive patterns, the easier it becomes for her to tell him off. Each performer gives as good as they get here. The film also offers Soderbergh a chance to examine our personal relationship to art, even if the viewer doesn't approach The Christophers from a perspective of art appreciation. The Christophers shifts over time to a questioning of the medium of painting, asking if it's actually a solitary art form if it's always informed by life and the people in one's orbit, and if abstractions and theories are all just a bunch of nonsense if they're backed up by real-world experiences and interactions. Soderbergh also poignantly wonders about the point where being successful means an artist's art is no longer for them, but instead a way to make others more financially successful. And via the film's clever twist, The Christophers also makes a subtle but lovingly adoring treatise on the wonder and meaning that could be found in even the most subpar of art. Christophers is a more crowd-pleasing and low-key entry into Soderbergh's filmography, but that doesn't mean that the director isn't able to find a good amount of depth in this material. This film is a great case of a work where less is more, and by getting out of the way of his leads, Soderbergh has found another winning formula. This one's going to get an 8 out of 10.
The questions you want to ask Lorne, I would ask other people, and then they'll give you a bunch of different answers, and then you can
Cut them together to funny music?
Exactly.
Do you know anything about his childhood?
Suburb of Toronto, right? That's Canada.
He liked hockey.
Liked hockey.
A lot of like outdoor hockey kind of stuff.
Fishing and, stuff like that. If you told me he'd made maple syrup, I would believe you.
I guess I don't know what his dad did.
We should ask him. We should, meet Lorne. Just talk to him.
Current king of the biographical documentary, Morgan Neville, who I covered a couple weeks ago with his look at Paul McCartney and Man on the Run, returns this week with a look at Saturday Night Live creator and longtime showrunner Lorne Michaels. And what we learn in Lorne is that the Canadian-born comedy legend isn't a very interesting person to be around. Or maybe that he is, and that he doesn't really want anyone to notice. And while that's actually part of the story Neville is trying to convey with Lorne, it doesn't make this documentary any stronger. Lorne Michaels has had the same routine for almost 50 years now. He wakes up at the crack of noon, doesn't really start his workday until 4 p.m. He works in the same office he's had since the start of SNL, with popcorn and Tootsie Rolls always at the ready, and he goes to bed around 4 in the morning. Such is the life of a producer who's worked most of his professional career on a series that has to deliver new episodes of sketch comedy every Saturday night at 11:30 p.m. for over half the year. Lorne traces Michaels' career back to his work as a writer on Laugh-In, his own short-lived sketch show on the CBC in 1970, and as an employee under comedy legend Lily Tomlin, whom Lorne still gives a tremendous amount of credit to for kickstarting his career in show business. Lorne talks about the show's early success, his departure in 1980, his return to the show in 1985, and the general ebbs and flows of the show ever since. By design, Lorne Michaels has been a staunchly private person, and although Neville has been granted a tremendous amount of access to his subject in the confines of famed Studio 8H, the film remains cagey about any specifics. Almost every interview subject that sits down with Neville says they only know small bits and pieces of the man's personal life, and to some of them the producer still remains a complete enigma. Alec Baldwin and Paul Simon seem to have a closer relationship to Michaels than most within the creator's orbit, with the latter even once concocting a fake legend about his friend's early years that went on to be cited in almost every major work ever written about Lorne Michaels as fact. Everyone else just states the obvious. Lorne isn't going to love being followed around with a camera, and Neville isn't going to learn much more about the man than he already did going into the project. And while it is fascinating to see Michaels in his element, and it's endearing to watch him try to unwind during his downtime at his family's second home in rural New England, the film doesn't make for a great biography. Stories of Michaels butting heads with executives at NBC who didn't like or understand the show, they're funny anecdotes to listen to if you love that sort of thing, and it's interesting observing how he's a calming, no-nonsense, sometimes overly blunt presence on a show that runs on chaos. But beyond that, Lorne is best viewed as a behind-the-scenes look at how SNL is run from the top down. But I don't think that was the intent here. I think that's just what the usually reliable Neville was able to get here. It's not Neville's fault that Lorne falls short as a biography. It's absolutely Michaels' prerogative to be as guarded as he wants to be. But even as a look behind the scenes of SNL, the film falls short because it's always trying to get to know Michaels rather than focusing on the work that he does. A full look at how the show is run from Lorne's perspective would be preferable to hearing the little bits and pieces of Michaels' life story that he feels comfortable giving to the viewer. I'm not mad about how Lorne turned out as a film, but I'm definitely disappointed, which is why this one's getting a 5 out of 10 from me.
Can I get 2 slices of pizza?
No.
Of course, honey.
No, you never ever finish 2.
Hello?
Mr. and Mrs. Cannon, I'm Deputy Chief at the U.S. Embassy. Your daughter Katie has been found. She's alive.
It's very important you fully prepare yourself for what you're about to see. No sudden moves. No loud noises.
Hey, Butterfly. It's Mom and Dad.
Yeah, we are here.
The interminable Lee Cronin's The Mummy is one of the most annoying horror movie slogs I've ever had the displeasure of sitting through in a long time. A film so bad, I'm shocked its director wanted to put their own credit above the title. This is the kind of movie I think someone would want their name taken off of instead of put onto the marquee beside the title. It's a project built upon idiotic logic, old ideas, dumb writing, and a misplaced sense of self-importance that would be unintentionally hilarious if it wasn't so painfully slow and boring. Also, calling this a mummy movie is a stretch. It's kind of built around a mummy, but the story is like you took every awful Exorcist sequel, put them all into a blender, and slapped the climax of Cronin's really good Evil Dead Rise onto the end because everyone just gave up on the whole thing before they could come to any sort of logical conclusion. Mismatch stars Leah Costa and Jack Rayner stars Larissa and Charlie Cannon, a married couple whose daughter mysteriously goes missing from their backyard while the latter is on assignment in Cairo as a journalist. 8 years and one additional kid later, their family of 4 is back living with Larissa's grandmother in Albuquerque, New Mexico, when they get a call from Egypt saying that their daughter Grace has been found. Young Katie, played by Natalie Grace, was found wrapped up in bandages inside a lead-lined sarcophagus that's been retrieved from the wreckage of a plane crash. She's suffering from a whole host of health issues, but the doctors laughably insist that the kid is good to go home and that she just needs some time to sort things out. It turns out that young Katie was part of a dark ritual and is now possessed by some kind of demon or spirit that will slowly start to infiltrate the rest of the Cannon family. The material from writer-director Cronin, which was originally reported to have the much more fitting title of The Resurrected, doesn't pass the logical and tonal sniff test from its opening moments. Lee Cronin's The Mummy, and I hate calling it a mummy movie, has material that sounds campy and cheesy on the surface, but it's treated as seriously as a sermon. Outside of a couple sight gags and the over-the-top gore that explodes in the film's final 20 minutes, there's nothing amusing about this film. Its grim severity is constantly at odds with a script that forces the cast to act out goofy scenarios with the straightest of faces. There's an absolute limit to which I can take a film seriously, when it has plot twists where the villains videotape their nefarious deeds to provide evidence of what they do, or movies where no one clearly notices deranged behavior happening inches from their faces. It's a nasty movie that could have had some devilish fun, but somewhere along the way the filmmakers decided to fine-tune all of this into a needlessly long plotting bit of grating pretension. And when I say long, I mean this movie is long. At 137 minutes, this is a movie that takes 20 minutes to set things up that other movies could do in 20 seconds. It makes Michael Cimino's cut of Heaven's Gate feel lightning-paced for almost 2/3 of its running time. This is not the kind of material that benefits from a slow cinema approach, because all of its plot machinations require the characters to be complete idiots. If you even question for a moment why this family doesn't try to get young Katie some professional help from the jump, Lee Cronin's The Mummy is not the movie for you unless you like getting dragged along by self-serious dummies for an absolute eternity. The concept of Cronin's plot requires some playfulness for a viewer to remain engaged by this nonsense, but instead he directs and writes everything like someone's filing a tax return. This is a movie that takes a full 70 minutes before either of the adults start to seek answers about what could be happening to Katie, and 90 minutes before anything that could be remotely described as thrilling even happens. I know this because despite all of my better judgment, I kept checking my watch throughout this movie. If there was some humor or craft or a plot that didn't keep ripping off better movies and trying to pass them off as its own ideas, maybe I would have given Lee Cronin's The Mummy more of a chance. And even when weird and crazy things do begin to happen, Cronin always sabotages the film's momentum by repeatedly falling into the same pattern. Something outlandish will happen, then everyone will seemingly reset things back to absolute zero as if nothing happened, and we just have to wait for the next beat to come around. It is infuriating to sit through because even when it threatens to be somewhat entertaining, the film simply can't leave well enough alone. The adult leads do not help. Rayner and Costa have no chemistry whatsoever, nor do they appear to be inhabiting the same movie. Costa's handling the material as if she's an art movie, while Rayner is constantly making bug-eyed, slack-jawed expressions in a bid to sell the fright factor, failing miserably in the process. And it's a shame because both are accomplished and decorated performers who just so happen to be given the worst performances of their career in the exact same movie. Veronica Falcone tries to inject some levity into things as a well-meaning, religiously minded grandmother, but she's always facing an uphill battle because she feels like she's been brought in from a much better, more fun movie. And every scene involving May Calmway as Cairo detective investigating Katie's disappearance bogs the film down further in needless lore that's never entertaining and serves to just provide one last reveal heading into the finale. There are 3 lone bright spots here. One is the makeup design, which is exceptional, especially when it comes to the look of the disfigured iteration of Katie. The other 2 are Grace as the film's main antagonist, and young Billy Roy as the Cannon's youngest daughter, Maud. These are the only 2 performers in the film who seem to think this movie should be any fun at all. These youngsters are able to pull things out of their characters that everyone else seems unable to do. Roy gets to play the only wholly sympathetic, likable, and logical person in the film, getting the only genuine laugh to be had here with a simple throwaway line. And Grace gives a literally full-bodied and physically demanding turn as a young girl possessed. They come out of this one unscathed. So yeah, the makeup is impressive, the kids are great, but these are the only things keeping Lee Cronin's The Mummy from being abjectly unwatchable. And adding to the disappointment is the overkill displayed in the film's finale, where Cronin seems to completely give up on his already overcooked and unsatisfying premise and simply remount the exact kind of stuff that he did in Evil Dead Rise. The difference here is that Evil Dead Rise was a fun, nasty, and campy movie, and this is just about as exciting as watching paint dry and then splattering those walls with gore and vomit. By that point, nothing was saving this debacle. This is a 2 out of 10 from me, and I almost wonder if I'm being too generous. This is time out of my life that I am never getting back. But what did you think about this week's movies? Drop a comment below, even if you think Lee Cronin's The Mummy was some kind of misunderstood masterpiece. Not going to be any judgment here. And while you're around, consider checking out one of my other videos or heading on over to The Gate to check out more of my work. Until next time, I hope you have a great week, and take care of yourselves.